Hello and welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri, and today we're going to be talking about Generation Z and millennials, I guess a little bit about millennials, but we're talking about younger people. And I just want to say right off the bat, this is not about bashing Gen Z or bashing young generations. I think there are some bad choices that people who are younger are making, and I think a lot of us in Gen X and older generations, like we made some of those same bad choices when we were younger. Uh, and then part of it is the world that young people are growing up in today, the world that we in part have allowed to happen. I think it's a lot harder growing up in this modern world than it was even a couple of generations ago when we were kids. I think there's a lot of different things. So, right off the bat, this is not a completely like, let's bash different generation streams, just so you know. Good to see some of you guys. Welcome to Friday. If you are in, I'm going to make a quick announcement for locals. If you're in the Georgetown, Texas area, my husband's playing at MCO tonight. I believe it's tonight, 7 to 9. And 7 to 9. And I haven't been able to go out to a show in a while because of I just had my 6-week post-op appointment for my surgery. Everything looks great. That was yesterday. And I'm going out. I haven't been to a show in a while. I'm going to a show. So if you're in the Georgetown, Texas area, I hope to see you at MCO. We're going to have some fun. So there you go. That's just a little local announcement. Hey folks, I see some regulars in the chat. Good to see you. Okay, so a couple things. Yes, thank you, Robert. Regardless of generations, bad parenting is usually at fault. I agree. It's just nowadays, I think bad parenting is more prevalent than ever for just a number of reasons. We're in a cultural and spiritual decline. We see people who are constantly choosing narcissism and selfish pursuits over their family. There's this popular TikTok video that was making the rounds a few days ago, and I was on George, the Giant Slayer show the other night, which was so much fun, by the way. I had fun with those guys. And he showed that video and we were talking about it. And it was a video of this woman who was looking at the camera. Like a lot of these TikTok videos happen in cars. I don't know why they all these people film themselves in cars. Like they're in the middle of doing something else. I don't know if they really are in the middle of doing something else or if that's just the vibe that they're going for. Maybe they scheduled a time to do their TikTok video and their set is their car. Like maybe they're like, it's time to do the video. Let me go to the front seat of my car. Wouldn't that be funny if I was like, it's time for Deprogrammed. Let's go to my car. Let me go to my set as if like, oh, hello. I didn't notice you there. I'm just doing some errands. Hi, I'm just coming back from the grocery store and I just had to go on camera in my car. That's how they're all doing it. Anyway, this woman was in her car and she was talking to the camera, and it was basically she was saying she's getting a divorce. She's in her 30s and she told her husband she wants a divorce, and she was sort of saying, look, everything, she's been married for 10 years. They have 3 kids together, and she said she's getting a divorce even though her husband, she loves who he is as an individual. She said, I love who he is as an individual. He's loyal, he's hardworking. But she said, what I want out of a relationship just isn't there and has never been there. And she said, I can't find myself. I can't be myself. She said, I can't be myself with my husband and I don't know who I am. Which, yeah, that's kind of funny. But the point is, it's incredibly narcissistic. It's incredibly selfish as a parent to choose finding yourself and this sort of exploration and growth, this navel gazing, that she wants to do. It's incredibly selfish to do that. As a wife, first of all, even if you didn't have kids, it's completely selfish. And it's even more selfish when you have children. You have 3 kids and you're just disregarding that to go, you do you kind of thing. And I say this as someone who suffered from this. I'm not absolving myself of guilt. I lived in and of the world for most of my life. I didn't find Christ until my late 30s, early 40s. So early 40s. So yeah, I was in that selfish, narcissistic attitude is very familiar to me. That's what the world teaches you is fine. That's what it teaches you is, by the way, if you're a woman, the world tells you that attitude, that kind of narcissism, it tells you that that's feminism and that's empowering. That's what it tells young girls. Go find yourself, go do yourself. It's programming, it's cultural programming. So, I could see bits of myself in that, and it was really disturbing for that reason, that video of that woman saying she's leaving her family. But, okay. So that was just to answer what you were saying, Robert, that yes, a lot of it is bad parenting. And now I think parenting is worse than it's ever been because those kind of attitudes are so prevalent where people are putting themselves above their spouse and above their children. So I have a couple of stats and things to pull up and we're going to talk about. I've also got some video clips of Jonathan Haidt. If you're not familiar with Jonathan Haidt, I think he's great. He was one of the first people when I first started coming out of the woke cult that I was in for 20 years. When I started coming out of it, I was reading just all kinds of different books. I was watching different videos. I was just, first of all, I had been in a cult for 2 decades. So I was starving for free thought. And I was starving for just intellectual critique and analysis and books and podcasts. And when you're in a cult, you're not allowed to engage with all these things. You really can only look at the cult approved sources and the cult approved material. So when I first got out, I was hungry for all of this knowledge. And I also was trying to figure out what I had just gotten out of. I was trying to figure out, like, why is the world going crazy? And what was this thing I was in that I thought was liberalism and it wasn't, right? And one of the books that really helped me, and I've mentioned it all the time because it was so impactful, was Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. That was a really big help. And it helped me to understand, the subtitle of that book is something like Why Good People Are Divided on Politics and Religion. And that book helped me to understand that people who disagree with me are not necessarily evil. They can be under the grip of evil or bad ideas, but doesn't mean they're necessarily evil. Like that book kind of showed overlapping moralities that people on the political spectrum have, or people of different faiths have, the ones that are overlapping and the ones that are completely different. And it's just a really great book. So I also got to see him speak when he came to a few years later, came to Georgetown, Texas, and he spoke at the university there. And that was great. And he has since written a book. Now, I haven't read this book yet, but I want to read it. It's about child rearing and what he calls the anxiety generation, the anxious generation. And he has put out a lot of stats about what's going on with young people. And I'm going to pull up first this one. Wait a minute. Let me just thank a couple people. I don't want to get too far behind. CB for $2. Thank you, CB. Says, get the likes up, people. Keri is goated. That is just very kind. Goat. Thank you. Goat means greatest of all time, doesn't it? I know that because of Michael Jordan. He's the goat. Randy Wallen for $10. Thank you. Randy says, like, comment, and subscribe, please. Hopefully see you later. Oh, cool. Randy is a Georgetown person, just so you know. He is a local. And then Push-Ups. Hey, Push-Ups says, see you at Content House, Keri. Oh, my goodness. I forgot to mention it. Yes. My friend Chrissy Mayer, comedian Chrissy Mayer, is hosting another Content House. It's coming up in September. And I think it's the first weekend of September. I got to go find the dates. Anyway, I'll have it ready to promote it next time. But for some reason, Chrissy and all these funny people usually invite me. I feel like I'm the sore thumb that sticks out because there's usually a lot of comedians and some adult film stars and people you wouldn't necessarily associate with what I do here at Deprogrammed. And then I feel like they're like, and let's get a weirdo. And they're like, let's bring in a weird lady. Yeah. And the comments are always funny because it's a totally different kind of audience there. I remember one year the people in their chats like to insult everyone who's on camera, and their insults for me were like, they were so funny. They were like, Keri looks like the kind of person who has a lot of doilies in her house, and I'm like, yeah, thanks, I do. And what somebody said something about my grandma clothing, and yeah, so get ready for that. It's always fun. It's always, you never know what's going to happen, and it's coming up in September, and I'm going to be back there, and my friend Mike Harlow is going to be there. It's going to be a blast. So go and check that out. Okay. The weirdo's the normal one. Yes. Yes, I'm the rebel. Okay. So let me pull this chart up. This is just incredibly sad and concerning, but also, from a scientific perspective, it's just interesting to try and understand what's happening. Let me scroll backwards. The way he presented this chart is pretty cool, because he's inviting you to guess what these numbers are going to be. And so this is a slideshow that he has, and you can see here a graph with no numbers. There's nothing on the X or Y axis. It's not telling you what it is, but you can see these line graphs, and they're differently colored. There's blue, red, yellow, and green. And then at the bottom, he puts on the next slide, he has the years. So the first one says, what do you notice? What do you wonder? The second one says, what new information did we just learn? What do you think this graph might be about? So you've got the years down there at the bottom, and this is a graph that is charting something from the year 2008 to the year 2020. I think it's 24, actually. It goes all the way up to 24. Okay. Then you can see this is a graph of the percentage of US anxiety, like how prevalent anxiety is from the years 2008 to 2024. If you go one more up, you can see that these are ages. The line graphs are ages, the different colored line graphs. And so it asks a question like, which line do you think represents these ages? 18 to 25, 26 to 34, 35 to 49, and 50 plus. Now, if you guessed that they are in descending order like that, exactly as presented, you would be correct. This top line here, the highest levels of anxiety, the highest reported levels of anxiety, and also the biggest increase in levels of anxiety is found among ages 18 to 25. That's the blue line. Isn't that crazy? I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if there's a way to make this bigger. Wait, there we go. It's a little larger. There you go. So 18 to 25. The youngest people have the highest anxiety. And not only that, like if you look back at 2008, 2010, 2012, it was it was still higher. It was a higher level, a higher prevalence of anxiety among young people. They were the highest, but at least it was pretty stable, even trending slightly downward. It was pretty stable. It was about as stable as the others. And then something happened right around 2012. Now, the bottom one, the green line, that's ages 50 plus. That anxiety level has stayed pretty stable this whole time from 2008 to 2024 or 2022. Look at it. It's pretty much hasn't changed. Above it, the yellow line, that's ages 35 to 49. And that one's pretty stable. It started to increase a little bit in 2016, just a little bit, increasing up through 2022. The red line, that's ages 26 to 34. Now, it started climbing around the same time as the blue line, like between 2011 and 2012. These two youngest age groups just started increasing in anxiety. And I think back to what was happening in 2011 and 2012. Now, some of this has to do with the increase in social media and the internet and all the different ways that social media and being connected and being online and having a mobile phone in your pocket all the time and all the different ways in which that is changing us. But some of it also probably has to do with, think about what was happening in the world at that time or in the US at that time, because this is the percentage of US anxiety 2011, 2012, for me, sticks out immediately as the time that social justice or woke ideology, back then it was still called social justice ideology, had started to take hold and to escape the academic institutions. And it had started to trickle down into entertainment. That was around the time the TV show I worked on, which was super woke, social justice kind of comedy show. That was around the time it was on the air. That was when all the people my age who had picked up social justice in college, who had experimented with social justice in college, which became known as woke later on. But those of us who had contracted it in college had started spreading it in whatever field we went into. So 2011, 2012 is when it started to become mainstream. It was in the media. You had presidential candidates talking about implicit bias and using all these cult phrases from woke, from social justice, right? And so I just can't help but wonder how much the mainstream adoption of that religion impacted young people and their anxiety level. Because I will tell you, when I was in that cult, especially in the late stages of it, that I would say the late stage of my involvement, it was very anxiety inducing because number one, it was spread not just to academic institutions, but it was also spread online. That was one of the mediums where people could contract it, was online. And that was one of the ways in which it was enforced. It was socially enforced online. And the social enforcement of social justice ideology, the social enforcement of woke ideology online was anxiety inducing because you would watch as people in your cult echo chamber online would mob each other. So-called friends would turn on friends. This was very prevalent at that time period. A couple of the mobbings I remember that were impactful to me because I didn't like what I saw happening, but I was too much of a coward to say anything at the time. And one of those was when the feminist part of social justice went after Meghan Murphy, who's a Canadian feminist, and started attacking her because she was speaking out against some of the absurd trans rights stuff, calling men women thing, she was presenting an alternative view, right? And for that, she was mobbed and harassed and defamed and deplatformed, and people who had considered her an ally and a friend and a hero were now picking up pitchforks and going after her. And that was in my circles. I saw that happening. Another one that I saw was Fit Mom. I've mentioned this before. Around that time, there was a mother named Maria Kang. I wonder what she's doing now. She made the news because she was a mom of several children who she promoted fitness plans and activities for young mothers, for how to stay fit even when you're a busy mom and you have lots of toddlers, right? And so she would put together these workout groups and motivational support groups and posters and stuff about staying fit. And they called her Fit Mom. That was her name, her brand name. And a lot of her like the groups that she organized in different cities were free. They were even free. She was like trying to help moms. Like, here's how you can stay. She did exercise plans that involved your kids. Like creative stuff that involved your children while you're working out. And she got mobbed by the feminist part of social justice because she put out a motivational poster that was a picture of her looking fit and hot with her kids hanging from her biceps, and it says, "What's your excuse?" And she just got attacked by the online mob. They were calling her, they said that she was fat shaming, and that she was basically an oppressor because she wasn't fat. So she's in the oppressor group, right? And they called her the worst names imaginable. You know how these cancellations go. And so she made national news because she was being shamed for it, and she was being They were trying to force her to apologize for doing workout programs for moms, encouraging moms to stay fit. And I saw that mobbing happening, and I think I did respond to a couple of things online about it, just saying, I don't really see it the way you do. And I was attacked. Like, I just remember that you weren't allowed to say that. There was immediate pushback. Whatever it was I said, it was like, no. I got the message loud and clear. No, you don't defend her. You don't offer another way of looking at it. And so this time period, this was all around like 2010, 2012, right around the time of this chart when you see the anxiety rates start to increase among young people. And so I can't help but wonder if it's not just technology that's playing a part in these increasing anxiety rates, but it's also ideology. Like what's the mainstream religion in America? What became the mainstream religion in America? Well, around the time of 2010 to 2012, it was social justice was becoming the dominant religion, especially among young people who are online more than older generations. And what is that religion about? Witch hunts, social shaming. So that graph is just very interesting. I'm going to show you this too. And then we're going to watch some Jonathan Haidt. This is an article about life skills that Gen Z are not losing. Now, if you look at stats, you can see, first of all, the public schools are failing the younger generations. You know, what we have allowed to happen to public schools, where you've got all the social justice and woke ideology coming into the classroom. They're being indoctrinated into this cult religion, but they're not actually learning how to do basic arithmetic or how to read. And so the literacy rates are falling. And on top of that, they're not learning basic life skills because they're perpetually online. This is a generation that has been raised with these devices in their hand. And so they're not learning how to do mental mathematics. Like they can't even do basic arithmetic in their head. A lot of them. I'm sure you may have encountered this anecdotally out in the wild. If you have a young Gen Z person working a cash register and the computer's down and it doesn't calculate the change, they have trouble figuring out how to make change. They weren't taught how to read analog clocks because everything's a digital clock now, so they don't know how to read clock faces. Most of them don't know how to read maps because they've never had to use a map. They've got the phone tells them where to turn. Now a lot of these things have impacted those of us who are older as well, because we don't practice these skills anymore. But at least like riding a bicycle, we remember how to do a lot of these things. Here, let me just go down this list. 11 life skills that Gen Z people are losing altogether. Gen Z may be tech savvy, but they're missing key life skills that could shape their future. This is an article from January. Number 1, they can't read or write in cursive. Due to changes in school curriculum, many Gen Zers never learned cursive. Not at all. We just said, don't worry about penmanship. We basically just said, don't worry about it. This lack of knowledge makes it harder for them to read historical documents and personal family journals, anything written in cursive. According to editor Liana Loza at Education Week, one common criticism of the Common Core curriculum is that it does not require cursive writing. Why? Why did we decide just like, I know we had to make room for learning about your white cis male privilege, right? As a result, some states have entirely removed cursive writing from their curriculum, while others like Tennessee and California decide to keep it in. Because of this inconsistency, many Gen Z no longer know how to write in cursive since they were never taught how to. To outsiders, cursive writing may not seem very important, especially since it's perceived as unnecessary, yet a lack of cursive skills complicates the ability to read it, making this an issue. Many historical family journals and archival collections are written in cursive, which poses challenges for those who can't read them. It's like a different language if you don't know how to read it, you know? Younger generations may struggle to interpret these sentimental pieces as quickly as earlier generations, causing them to miss out significantly. Number two, they struggle with mental math. This is what I was talking about because they've always used calculators. Gen Z is increasingly unable to do mental math, relying too heavily on calculators. This dependency limits their problem-solving ability without digital help, affecting their overall mathematical and cognitive skills. So it's not just that they can't, I guess you could be sitting there thinking, so what? They have a calculator on their phone, they can add it up, assuming everything digital still works. But it's not just that, it's your whole cognitive function. It's the way your brain works. It's basically like you're not as fit mentally because you can't picture it in your head and you can't do the math. It limits their problem-solving ability, their overall cognitive skills. It's not just about whether they can add 5 plus 8. Let's face it, math in general is pretty tricky. In truth, they don't teach math like they used to. And as a result, a life skill that Gen Z people are losing altogether is not being able to do mental math. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the average test scores for U.S. 13-year-olds in reading and math have dipped since 2020. And, let's add on top of this, the anxiety, the depression, all the stuff we were talking about before. Throw the COVID policies into the mix in 2020 when they were forcing kids to stay home and not go to school. So you've also got a generation that's dealing with that. Because of this, their ability to comprehend math, let alone do it in their heads, has become a life skill that has slowly faded out of existence. In the age of technology, why would Gen Z feel the need to do mental math when they can do it on a calculator? Unfortunately, this mentality makes Gen Z and other generations feel too comfortable depending on convenience to get by and stunting their growth. So how can teachers, parents, they repeat it. Teachers, parents, and teachers. Maybe a Gen Z person edited this. I'm kidding. I'm just joking. So how can teachers and parents help students improve in math and by extension mental math? One study published in the International Journal of Education and Social Science Research found that Gen Z can enhance their math skills by shifting their attitude towards learning, motivation, attention, and flexibility. However, this is also a collective effort that will undoubtedly take much time to reverse. Number 3, they don't know how to read a map. This is something we mentioned because they're using GPS and digital navigation, which just tells you where to turn. And this part is important. Most people no longer need to read a map. GPS is a standard feature on most electronic devices and new cars. However, just because Gen Z doesn't need to know doesn't mean they shouldn't. It's an essential survival skill that's beneficial to learn regardless of our time. And I'll just say this as someone who doesn't use maps as much as I used to, and I can't remember how to get places that I used to have such a better memory. And you guys, my age, you probably remember this. So in the large cities, like I lived in Los Angeles for 15 years after college, we had the Thomas Guide. Does anybody here remember the Thomas Guide? That was for a dense city like LA, where you couldn't just have a map that you pull out. Like if you're driving cross country, you got the map, you had to have a book. And if you were driving somewhere, you had to sit down before you went and you had to pull it out and you had to look at the pages and turn, trace the road you were going to and then take it to, turn to page E5 or whatever and pick up where that road. The Thomas Guide took a while to figure out, how to get from point A to point B in a large city. And by virtue of doing this and because you didn't have these devices telling you where to turn, you learn the roads much better. And in my mind, I still have a visual map of Los Angeles because I lived there for so long and because I had to know how to get around. And I had that map of that place. I don't have that. Not to the same detail, not to the same detailed degree. I don't have that where I live now because I am dependent on these devices telling me where to turn. And so I don't develop a mental image the same way I would if I were using a map and I were mapping it myself. And there are times where the phone will guide me to a place. I wouldn't even realize I'm going if I take the wrong turn because I don't have the same awareness of, north and south and east and west. And my husband will look at my dot. We can see where each other are on our phones. He will look at my dot sometimes and text me and say, "Why are you going that way?" He's like, "That's not the right way. You're going way out of the way." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought I was just listening to the directions." It's not good for you. You should be able to read the map. So I'm indicting myself as well. But at least I still like a bicycle. I think if I were to get the maps out, if the phone wasn't working, I could figure out how to get from point A to point B. I don't know if they're able to do that, Gen Z. Okay. Let me go back to this one. We can get through some of these quickly because I want to show you this Jonathan Haidt video. Okay. They don't know how to cook basic meals. Gen Z often relies on food delivery apps and fast food, which affects their health. Yeah, it's not good for you to constantly eat fast food. Learning to cook basic meals would help them make healthier food choices and live a more balanced lifestyle. As they grow up, many Gen Zers jokingly say, "I can't even boil water." Eating out is detrimental. A study of nutrients indicates it often results in a higher BMI and increased consumption of saturated fats, sugar, and sodium, while fiber intake decreases. These things can decrease a person's lifespan if they're not careful. So what can Gen Z do to make cooking easier? Luckily, modern technology might be helpful as rice cookers and instant pots have become easily accessible. Combine this with meal prepping and limiting takeout food to once or twice a week, and Gen Z can slowly but surely learn to make decent, healthy meals. Well, this is another one where I think this started much earlier, before Gen Z. This started certainly with Gen X and people I know. We didn't learn, our parents. I did not learn how to cook from my parents. Now, I'm not saying I'm representative of all of Gen X. I'm just saying there were many of us who grew up with boomer age parents who did not teach us how to cook. And I wish I had been more interested in that and insisted on learning from my grandmother. I should have asked my grandmother, right? I should have asked my grandmother a lot of things and I didn't. But I didn't, I had both parents working. I stayed after school with my grandma, who was also cutting hair. We didn't learn a lot of these life skills. I didn't have a stay-at-home mom. My dad cooked more than my mom did, So I didn't learn a lot of this stuff until college. And then I was living in a house with friends, some of whom knew how to cook better than I did. So that's when I started to learn. The point being, I feel like this has been a trend for a while now where women especially are not learning homemaking skills. I know so many women who regret it. When you get to be older and you're realizing, wow, I wish I knew how to do this. I wish I knew how to do that, like sewing, cooking. Now, fortunately, I started learning to cook in college and I loved it. And I think I'm a pretty good cook. But I should have learned when I was younger. And a lot of Gen Z, I don't know if they're interested. Some of them don't seem very interested in it because they can press a button and something shows up at their house. DoorDash and all of that. I don't use any of that. I still, if we're not going to cook, we do it the old fashioned way. We go out to a restaurant and sit down. I don't know. I just prefer that, like if it's like date night, we're going out, then we're going to go out. Occasionally we'll bring something home, but rarely. Anyway, I guess young people are very reliant on DoorDash and stuff. If you are a younger person, especially if you're a woman, I'll just say one last thing and then I won't belabor this anymore. But especially if you're a woman, it behooves you to know how to cook. When you start thinking about marriage, like if I could talk to my younger self, there's all these lessons I would tell my younger self. But one of those is the best things in life are your husband, your family, having a meaningful, purposeful life. And if you want to be somebody who brings something to the table, I'm always hearing young women talk about how there aren't enough good guys to date. Like you see all these TikTok videos of young women complaining about the dating scene, and there seems to be something of a double standard that I think the feminist part of social justice has probably contributed to, where there's a lot of emphasis on what the guy brings to the table. Like, you better do this, you better do that, and you better have this. I see videos where these women are very demanding about what the guy does. And I don't know if they have those same. In fact, I know some of the videos I've seen, they don't. They say that I watched one yesterday where she was bragging and saying, I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to do anything. And my husband adores me anyway. And good luck with that. Good luck with maintaining that. I don't know how. I mean, I feel like a person like that, you've got to be insufferable to be around, not just as a wife, having you as a wife, but having you as a friend. Somebody who's sort of like, I don't know how to do anything and I don't care and I'm super into myself and that's it. Okay, great. But if you're a young woman learning how to cook, this is one of the greatest skills. It's such an easy thing to be able to offer someone. Like, I'm going to make you a delicious meal. And men too. I mean, I'm not saying men shouldn't learn how to cook. I'm just saying especially women. Okay. Because why am I saying especially women? Because I'm a sexist. I'm kidding. That's why I get called. They say what do they say? I'm internally misogynistic. Okay, they don't know how to cook. They lack basic etiquette. This is a big one. And this relates to one of the other studies I just saw that kind of prompted this video. They don't have social skills. They don't interact as much. A lot of these young people, I mean, what we collectively, I say, our country did to them, we took them out of school. We didn't allow them to socialize. We put them on Zoom only classrooms and we put masks on everybody's faces when they were, during important developmental years for these young people. And so a lot of them don't know how to interact in person. A lot of them spend more time online than they do around real people, like out in the wild. And so they don't know basic etiquette. And again, this is a parenting failure, I think, but it makes all the difference when you meet young people who've been socialized by their parents. Here's what's funny in today's day and age, it's the homeschooled kids and the ones who go to like private Christian schools who I think are the best when it comes to being socialized. In my experience, this is an anecdote, but yes, the kids I've met who go to my church or the children of some of my friends in Austin, I'm thinking of them, for example, and their parents, are Christians and they care about their education, how they're socialized. They're very polite. They say ma'am and sir. They understand etiquette. For the most part, I think they're more intelligent and they're more present than a lot of the children I've seen who are just raised out in the secular world and who go to public school. They're not on their devices all the time. They can have a dinner with adults and they listen and pay attention and are engaged and they know when to say something and when to stay quiet and listen. They know how to talk to adults and they know when they should give input and when they shouldn't. All of these things that are sort of like they understand nonverbal cues. They understand etiquette. I think, if we're able to have a child, like we're going to go the private Christian school or homeschooling route. For this reason, just because of the results that I've seen. They also, by the way, their SAT scores are higher. They know how to read. They know how to do basic math. Okay, so they lack basic etiquette. This part, I'm going to read just some of this because this is interesting. Gen Z ignores basic etiquette such as table manners and proper social behavior. This can hurt their careers and social relationships, especially in important situations where first impressions matter. Unfortunately, Gen Z lacks this essential skill. In a recent survey, it revealed that 73% of Brits think that people today are less mindful of table manners than in the past. Yes, of course they are. The findings also indicate that 77% of Gen Z disregard the rule about elbows off the table. 37% are unconcerned about taking food off of other people's plates. 77% don't prioritize using a knife and fork properly. On the outside, this might not seem like a big deal, but if someone has poor etiquette and manners when it matters most, they will unintentionally miss out on opportunities due to their closed-minded ways. According to a study in social cognition, once someone has a bad first impression of a person, it is increasingly complex to change their mind, even if they're presented with contradictory information. Okay, number 6, they can't sew. Now, like the cooking one, this one I think you can indict earlier generations as well. Again, Gen X, which I'm a part of, on the tail end of Gen X, a lot of us did not learn this from our parents, our boomer parents. I wish I had asked my grandmother. And so many of us are learning these crafting skills later in life. I should plug my friend Little Ragamuffin if you want to learn how to sew. She has and you're in Las Vegas, she has a new company called Peace, Love, and Sew, and she teaches people how to sew. She also does workshops, and you should give her a follow. Peace, Love, and Sew. But this isn't just Gen Z. I mean, it's true. Yeah, they can't sew, but a lot of us couldn't either. We should have been learning this. They avoid shopping in person, Gen Z. They prefer online shopping. They miss out on the experience and the social skills involved in shopping in person. This is also why I think they're bad at etiquette. They're not used to interacting with people as much. They avoid physical stores. They don't know how to do basic household repairs. This one, again, you can indict millennials and Gen X as well. A lot of us did not learn this until later. When my husband and I moved into this house, we barely knew anything about home repairs. Like, we thought we were pretty good because we could patch a wall or something, but it wasn't until we started renovating this place that we're like, oh, here's all the, there's actually all these skills that we don't have that we're learning slowly. This one is weird, and I think this one is uniquely Gen Z. They avoid learning to drive. Now, I've heard this over and over from parents that their Gen Z kids are delaying getting their driver's license. Like, they don't seem concerned about it. I've heard this from multiple parents that their Gen Z kids are content having their parents drive them everywhere, or getting rides from friends, or taking Uber. Like, they don't seem to care about that freedom and independence that comes with having your driver's license and knowing how to drive yourself. And this, I think, is uniquely a Gen Z thing. And it's also setting you up to be, it's especially alarming because I think it's setting you up to buy into a lot of the propaganda that's coming down the pipeline about how you should not be able to own or drive a private vehicle. The globalism crap that's coming down the pipeline against private property ownership in general, but specifically they're trying to get rid of private vehicles. And it seems like a lot of Gen Z is primed to go along with that because they're like, well, I don't even care if I have my driver's license. When we were kids, Gen X, like, we could not wait to get our driver's license. That's also because we didn't have an online to spend time on. So if you wanted to see your friends, you wanted to go out, you wanted to go to the mall, you wanted to go to the skating rink, like, you wanted to do things in person. This is why our social skills were better also, because we were doing things in person. These younger kids, I think they're almost like, well, they don't care if they have the driver's license because nobody's going to the mall to see friends. I saw a study, one of these in the stats, the data I was reading for this episode, that like 95% of their time is spent indoors. They don't go outside. They don't garden, which also leads to increasing depression and anxiety rates because you're not spending any time outdoors. So those are some of the concerning statistics. Now, this one is really interesting. It's just one study, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is a study about the prevalence of antisocial behaviors in Gen Z. So given we were just talking about lack of social skills and etiquette and, not going outside as much or doing as many things outdoors. This was a study that was done to find out if there was a higher incidence of antisocial behaviors. So meaning antisocial, which is typically it's the cluster B type of behavior. We associate it with what's called the antisocial personality disorder. So sociopaths, psychopaths, like those kind of traits, lack of empathy, high degree of narcissism, these things. So this study said a post hoc analysis revealed statistically significant differences for antisocial behaviors in Generation Z when compared to the 41 to 50 plus age group. So again, take it with a grain of salt. It's one study, but when I was looking for differences and ways in which Gen Z has been affected, and who knows all the ways they've been affected, we're sort of treating these younger generations like guinea pigs as we push new technology and masking and forced lockdowns and all kinds of crazy stuff on them. Okay, I'm going to watch, we're going to watch this video. So this is an interview of Jonathan Haidt, who I mentioned has written a lot about this. And this is an interview of him on The Daily Show. I was kind of surprised they had him on. Now, he's got some great talks on this subject, but they're all pretty long, and this one's shorter. So we're going to watch a little bit of this.
Jonathan, I see people walking all over Brooklyn holding this book. It's talking about the Great Rewiring. Talk to me. What is the Great Rewiring?
So something happened to young people born after 1995. All of a sudden, in the early 2010s, their mental health collapsed. Rates of anxiety and depression skyrocketed. Self-harm is up like 150% for younger teen girls. Suicide is up 50%. Something happened in the early 2010s. And my argument in the book is a tragedy in two acts. The first act is the loss of the play-based childhood. It's what anybody over 40 in this audience had. You were out with your friends after school. There was nobody supervising. You had to learn how to work out conflicts, how to face adversity. So that's what kids have had for hundreds of thousands of years.
I'm going to pause it right here. If you're not familiar, this is something that Jordan Peterson's also talked about, how we've lost the playful childhood. We don't allow kids to engage in play in the same way, and how this has detrimental effects on them.
It's part of being a mammal. You play, you develop skills. We began to crack down on that, to lock kids up in the 90s, to not let them out. So we're restricting what they most need, which is play, from the 90s through the 2000s. But mental health doesn't collapse then. It's actually pretty stable. Then we get Act Two, which is the arrival of the phone-based childhood. And what that is in 2010, everybody had a flip phone. The iPhone had come out, but most teens had a flip phone. No front-facing camera, no social media on the phone, no high-speed data. And by 2015, everyone's got all those other things. Now suddenly everyone has a smartphone, front-facing camera, high-speed internet, social media, especially Instagram, on the phone. And almost like someone turned a switch in 2013, girls in America and many other countries suddenly become very anxious, depressed, and self-harming. And so
I'm going to switch it back to, let me just take this off for a second. I'm going to switch it back to this graph that we were looking at earlier. Now, this was also shared by Jonathan Haidt, this graph that we looked at the beginning, where you can see the anxiety rates. And just to remind you, we were talking about, look how they start upticking for young people around the year like 2012, like somewhere between 2011, 2012. And that's what he's talking about, is what happened then. The phone, the camera, Instagram, all the social media apps on it, the modern, this thing that we all have that happened at the same time. At the beginning, I was talking mostly about ideology also, because I think that plays a huge part. But kids being online constantly and looking at what everyone, this sort of surveillance society of seeing what everyone's doing and everyone uploading what they're doing, and and comparing yourself to everyone else, started around that time. Okay, let's go back to him.
That's what the book is about. Something changed between 2010 and 2015, and I'm trying to explain what it is.
You're saying in Act 2, they introduced Chekhov's cell phone, and,
Yeah.
and we know what ends up happening after that. You look at sort of the adolescent brain.
Yes.
How dumb and stupid is a 13-year-old's brain?
I would say not dumb and stupid at all. I would say it's in the process of remodeling, and it's still in the early phases. So we have, children have a brain which is actually almost full size. By age 6, the brain is almost full size.
I'll fact check that. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. But okay, continue.
You must be right.
Yeah, thank you.
The rest of childhood is not about growth. It's about picking which neurons survive and which ones get eliminated. It's all about wiring up. And that happens slowly in childhood. But then around age 11, 12 for girls, puberty starts a little later, a couple years later for boys, and you get this massive, quick rewiring of the brain to sort of lock down into an adult configuration. It starts more in the back of the brain. The prefrontal cortex is the last part to develop. And so around the age of 13, kids' emotional areas are rewiring. They have the beginnings of sexual urges and lust. They're very emotional, passionate, but they don't have the self-control to say, like, no, I'm not going to spend a 5th hour on TikTok. I'm just going to keep going because I can't stop myself.
Mm-hmm. And so, when does that stop? Because I'm looking forward to that happening soon. At like 47?
Yeah. He's joking, but that's true for a lot of adults. This is why I feel like a lot of lately what you see on social media are adults, like grown-ass people acting like 13-year-olds, completely emotional, can't unplug, don't have the prefrontal cortex part that's like, hey, baby, don't share every thought you're having or every problem online. Maybe hold some of it back.
48, like when does that part of my brain close off and I can put the phone down?
Well, in your case, I really can't say, but for most people...
Buy the sequel. I get it. I get it. Smart.
25 is when the frontal cortex is done rewiring.
Okay, I'll tell you when that happens. Well, it's interesting how you're talking a lot about not only these phones come in and they change the way kids think and the way sort of society thinks, but you talk about raising a child, an anti-fragile child.
Yes.
And you make some bold claims in this book, one of which is right here. You claim that this merry-go-round playground spinner is the greatest piece of playground equipment ever invented. Defend yourself.
Okay.
How first of all,
okay. How is it not? What is better?
I mean, a teeter-totter is just a metaphor of you're up, you're down. It's what life is all about. Work with somebody else. Yeah. One's up, one's down. There's no way to stay in the middle.
Yeah. The key.
I just have to comment on Wes says, ha ha ha, everything's a big joke, huh? Yeah, this guy's a little annoying, this Daily Show guy, because Jonathan Haidt's there to talk about something that's pretty serious and concerning, and this guy's trying to make it all a joke. But in fairness, it is also a comedy show. It's supposed to be. I think we forget that because a lot of these late night shows have just lost their ability to be funny. But technically, it's supposed to be a comedy show, so he's trying to make hay. He's trying to make something funny out of it. But yeah, it's a little annoying that he keeps laughing so much.
Oh, okay. While I have no citations to prove my claim, the psychological thing I'm trying to get at there is thrills. This is something I talk a lot about in chapter 3, that kids need to play, but they especially need risky play. Kids literally need to face risk. If you don't give them risk, they'll find a way to get it. They'll climb up on walls. They'll climb trees. If they skateboard, they'll skateboard downstairs. Kids need to have some actual risk. And so, yes, you're right. A swing set, a teeter-totter, if it's really big and you could come crashing down, there is risk. And
why are you trying to hurt these kids?
Well, because you have to put kids in a situation where they can get hurt, because only then do they learn every day how to not get hurt. And what we've done since the 90s is we've put them in places that are so safe, there's no chance to get hurt, which means they don't learn how to not get hurt. The human program of evolution is kids face risk, they're a little scared, they have to be a little scared, they overcome it, and then they're more confident the next time around.
Let me pause this for a second and just remind everybody about the COVID years that we went through. Now, what happened in the COVID years? We took this, what he calls Act 1 from the 90s, where we started pushing safetyism and making sure that everything was sanitized and kids, there was no risk involved in play, and that trying to prevent anything bad from ever happening to them. So they didn't learn how to avoid bad things. Well, we did this society-wide during the COVID years. We were seriously straight-faced. Our government was telling adults that it's too risky for you to go to work. It's too risky for you to open your coffee shop, mom and pop business. So you're going to have to lose your coffee shop and your business that you built because we're not going to let you open it because it's too risky for you to weigh to make the cost benefit analysis and figure out if it's worth it or not. It's too risky for you to do that. The government's here to tell you, the authoritarian government's here to tell you can't do it. The government's here to tell you you can't go outside without a mask. The government's here to tell you you can't even have friends and family over for Thanksgiving. It's too risky. There's a reason why a lot of us were so pissed off about this during the COVID years because it doesn't make any sense. It's not true. I remember my pastor, Bradley Helgerson at Church on the Square, he gave a great sermon during this time about how insane this was. And he was like, life is risk. Everything we do every day, you're taking a multitude of risks, and we naturally do the cost benefit analysis of every choice that we make. And some people still choose to take, make a riskier choice than others. But we're adults. That's what life is. There's risk in everything. So you get on a motorcycle and you drive down the street, you are choosing to take that riskier mode of transportation. You get in a car and you buckle up and you're still taking a degree of risk that, a drunk driver won't hit you. Everything we do is risk. That's what life is. And suddenly the government was saying, oh, no. It was pretending like, oh, no. You can't make this cost benefit analysis yourself. It was pretending like we don't evaluate risks multiple times a day, that we don't do riskier things all the time, which we do. It's a trade-off. Yes, Squat and Pee, without some risk, we can't learn anything. And so the government was doing to us what a whole generation of parents did to kids in the 90s and said, you can't go outside, you can't make your own decisions. You can't decide if you're going to put the mask on or not, or you're going to take the vax or not, or you're going to go to work or not, or open your business or not. We're not going to let you decide. It was infuriating, and it's not healthy, and it's not normal. And it does not make resilient people or resilient children. It actually makes resentful, very resentful children.
And that's the path to adulthood. But we stopped that in the 90s. We said, no more of that. We're going to keep you overprotected forever. And then we're going to send you to universities like mine, where you're coming in still not ready for independent living.
Now you take that, and then you fast forward to this modern era where kids are obsessed with phones, they're on the internet, they're on social media sites. Right. Is there an argument, though, that the anti-fragile way in which kids need to, it's not to pull this thing away, that they need to be exposed to the risk that the internet has? This is the world that they're going to be born into anyway. Shouldn't they be learning how to navigate that at an early age?
Yeah, in theory, yes, but let's look at, say, sexuality. We want them to learn how to have sex. Does that mean we should give them running start at age 8? There are certain things that are not appropriate at that time.
Just to be clear, I did not say that. This was not that. That's not theoretically. That was theoretically. Okay, yes, boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've heard this before. In theory, like, why are you, you're saying we need to protect them less in the real world, but you're saying we need to protect them more in the virtual world. Isn't that contradictory? Not at all. Not at all. We're mammals. Kids need to be out playing, roughhousing, putting their arms around each other, touching out in nature. This is the way a lot of us grew up. You play outside. And when you put kids in an environment where everything goes through their phone, as soon as you give your child a phone, that they're going to use that. Now the latest stats are around 9 hours a day they're on their phone. And a lot of them, it's almost all the time because they're always checking. That
Ugh.
blocks out
9 hours a day, but actually more than that. I know it's more than that.
time in nature, time with friends. Time with friends is down 65% since 2010. Kids need time with friends. Texting and sending emojis doesn't compensate. It's done instead of time with friends. And that, I think, is why as soon as they moved on to social media and the boys onto multiplayer video games, they got so lonely. Loneliness surged along with depression and anxiety.
It's interesting. You talk a little bit about in childhood discover mode versus like defensive mode. And even in a world of the arts, I did improv comedy forever, and I think the mindset of that is a discovery mindset, right? And so you're constantly looking for something. It was interesting reading this in terms of how to raise a child and to put them in that open mindset, but it seems remarkably reflective of just how society feels right now. And I don't know if that's is because partially because of our connection to social media and the anxiety that is there. But do you see parallels there as well, that we are inadvertently too in defensive mode because of these devices that we have in our pockets and our hands?
Yeah. Well, right now it does seem like everything is going to hell because it actually is.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's not just my phone telling me that.
But it wasn't that way.
It wasn't that way.
It wasn't that way in 2012. So the fact that this happened in so many countries at the same time, and a lot of people say, oh, well, the global financial crisis, that must be what it was. Like there were real economic difficulties. Yeah, that was 2008. Why did the numbers not begin going up until 2012, 2013, when the economy is getting better and better? So you can't make the claim that things were so terrible in Obama's second term compared to his first that all of a sudden teens, especially teen girls, suddenly fell off a cliff. That just doesn't work. So, if this had all started in 2020, we could say, well, yeah, COVID and all the craziness that's going on, but this started in 2012. There's no other explanation that anyone's proposed for why it happened in so many countries and hit girls the hardest.
It's the prevalence of phones. And I want to show you, I'm gonna show you another clip of Jonathan Haidt where he was on the podcast Dad Saves America, and he's talking about the same sort of thing, but he's got this section at the end about advice for parents. And this video is called Anti-Fragility is the Secret to Raising Adults. Here we go.
How hard it is to raise a kid today. My kids are 10 and 13. They have to apply for competitive schools. So many other kids are doing so much. Are they going to fall behind? It's really hard to raise a kid today. But I think it's really important for parents to think about the long term. What's your goal here? Is your goal to just get your kid over the next hurdle? Or is your goal to make it so that your kid can get over hurdles herself for the rest of her life? And once you think about it long term, and once you understand anti-fragility, now you can do the hard thing, which is to say, I want to help you. I can fix that, but I won't. And sometimes you have to just turn away, close your eyes. Obviously not if it's a life-threatening emergency, but something like cooking. My daughter is learning to cook, and sometimes I have to just move away. I understand that she might have to actually burn her fingers on the stove. I can't be there always watching her hand, because I realize that if she burns her fingers, she learns, and then she won't do it again. That's really hard to do. And it doesn't feel compassionate, but in the long run, it is the most compassionate thing you can do.
So that's a great interview, by the way, he does on Dave's Dad Saves America, where he's just basically talking about anti-fragility. This is a topic that interests me a lot. I know there's some parents in the chat and deprogrammed folks who have kids who I've seen your conversations about this and your thoughts about it. I don't claim to know what the answer is and how to raise well-adjusted kids in today's society, but I want to know for personal reasons and for society, for the purposes of a better world for the young adults who are coming up and for the future generations. I want to know. So I think I'm going to do some more episodes on this. If you have suggestions, especially on the solution, feel free to offer them in the comments or in the chat. If there's something you think I should check out. Cynthia Carter, for example, says, yeah, her kids almost never get tablet time. They are locked out of our phones, and we are not getting them their own phones until they're basically adults, which is a ways out. Tech plus young brains is bad. Now, I get called an extremist for this view, but I tend to agree with you, Cynthia. I don't think, because the brain is still developing. I hear people say, well, they need the phone because they need to learn how to use all the same technology their peers are using. That's not true. They can pick that stuff up relatively quickly once they're young adults. They don't need it when they're 2 and 3 and 4. I think I'm going to be pretty hardcore about it. Push-ups for $1.99. Thank you, Push-Up says, reading cursive is like listening to a guy who mumbles. What? No, it's not. It's beautiful. I have some old, gosh, let me show you something, Push-Ups. So I collect a lot of antiques and I like mementos when I go to antique shops, because I always find these old things and I just wonder how they ended up there and the people involved. I guess I have a high degree of sentimentality, but look at this. This is an old autograph book from 1904. You see this book? I just happen to have this lying here because I was looking at it earlier. And inside, there's all these people who have autographed it to their friend, Bertha Rose. This was her autograph book. Now the cover's falling off. I'm going to try and get it rebound. But their penmanship is beautiful. It's cursive. And they all speak in poetry. Like they all wrote poems to her about what a good friend she was, and they hope she has a happy life. And this is something people used to do. I've seen these autograph books before. I guess you could think of it like a high school yearbook, the way we used to sign each other's yearbook at the end of the year. They would have these little autograph books and they would all sign like notes to each other, but they would write their thoughts, their feelings, their wishes for each other, not just in cursive, beautiful penmanship, but also in poetry. Their command of the English language is so much better than ours. They didn't have AI to write it for them. Thank you for the super chat, Push-Ups. John West for $20. Hey, John, thanks for the super chat. Says, it all still feels like a concerted effort by someone to destroy us. Who is doing this to us? Well, John, my answer may not be satisfying depending on your beliefs, because I know a lot of non-believers, they think this is cheesy. And trust me, I used to be one of the non-believers who would think this was cheesy and ridiculous. But I truly believe I'm a Christ follower. I truly believe the verses about how we are at war, not with the things of this earth, but we are at war with principalities and spirits. Like we are in much more than a cultural or a political war. We are in a spiritual war. And I tend to think of all the darkness in the world as like, that is Satan. That's what that means by Satan. All of the darkness, all of the evil, all of those forces. And I think there is a battle happening for our very souls. So yeah, I know that sounds crazy to a non-believer. I accepted a long time ago. When I became saved, I was like, look, I guess I'm just going to be a weirdo Christian now. There's that moment where you're like, no, not me. But yeah, that's what I believe. And I think that the devil has made lots of inroads in the past few decades on the souls of all of us, and young people especially. Super Based for 13 months. Super Based is here. Good to see you again. Says, in addition, my son will know compound interest. Oh, that's great. The more you put in, the more benefits the more you sow, the more you will reap over time. That's a great lesson to teach. Rhaegar Targaryen says, honestly, I think part of it might be I was in high school when we got the internet at my house. It was AOL and dial-up, and most people did not have it. I didn't get a cell phone until I got in the Navy. You and I are probably around the same age. We got dial-up. We had AOL when I was in like middle school, late middle school, early high school. And I didn't have a cell phone until college, and it was an emergency cell phone. Nobody actually used it. You kept it in your glove compartment for emergencies, like if you had a wreck or something. Nobody was on it. It was very different. So I think that being perpetually online and these devices and everything, I think it's affected us as well, the older generations. But at least our brains had finished developing by then. And these young kids, like, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows the deleterious effects? Like that study I read, and again, I said, take it with a grain of salt. It's just one study, but it said that there's a higher incidence of psychopathic traits, of antisocial behaviors among Gen Z. We don't even know all the different repercussions of raising children like this. I don't know. If you have advice, if you're a parent like Cynthia, who gave her advice in the chat, feel free to leave it here. If you think there's somebody I should read or check out on this subject, like I said, something I'm interested in, let me know in the comments. And thank you guys for being here today. Thanks for interacting. I hope you have a happy weekend. I hope you get outside. Fight against the statistic I read about, like 95% or people spend 95% of their day inside. Get outside, do some gardening. It's the most fun. Go out, spend some time in the outdoors. If you're in Texas, it's really hot right now, so try and pick the time of day that you do that. I was outside for over an hour yesterday in Austin at it was the worst time of day. It was over 100 degrees, I think. So make sure you do it in the early morning or the afternoon. But get outside, and you guys have a great weekend. If you're in Georgetown, maybe I'll see you at MCO tonight. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.